It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, May 27th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is talking draft prospects with Chris Peters.
Nothing I love more than talking prospects.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and happy Friday. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You'll keep up to date on all the Flyers news and our episodes. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. On today's show, it's all NHL draft today. We've got not just the brilliant mind of Russ Cohen talking about draft prospects, but we've got special guest Chris Peters on the show, who is a draft and prospect analysis expert from Daily Faceoff. Very excited to bring you that today. Locked On Flyers is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you are listening. So subscribe. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And without further ado, here is our conversation with Chris Peters. We are so thrilled to welcome to Locked On Flyers Chris Peters, who is a draft and prospect analyst from Daily Faceoff. Welcome, Chris. How you doing?
Rachel, I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me. It's good to be with you and Russ today. And it feels like the draft is way too close right now. I feel like it's sneaking up on me suddenly after going through this the entire season. It always happens this time of year.
But we have
It
longer
really
to
does.
do it, though. There's a longer runway now.
That's true, but it's still, I would like more time.
All right. So starting off, Chris,
Just to be ready.
What is your take on this draft class overall? And do you think there's less consensus on it after COVID and having sort of less opportunity to see some of these kids in person?
Yeah, I think this year was in a lot of ways better than last year just because there were more live viewings and there were fewer interruptions, but there were still interruptions. There were still times where you didn't see players, and obviously we had the World Juniors canceled and different things that didn't allow this to really feel like the full season. So I do think that that's contributed in some ways. I think the fact that there was, most OHL players did not play last season, including Shane Wright, who's, the guy that could be number one. We don't know how that really impacted their development. And if that, whether or not that has a huge impact on kind of where they go and how long a timeline they have for the NHL. And, we have to kind of take that into account when we're evaluating these players and especially guys that at the very top of this draft that might have missed significant time developmentally. So, I would say that the consensus for this draft is all over the map. So there isn't much of a consensus in that way. I still think that Shane Wright would be on number one on most boards, but not necessarily all of them, and certainly not every single team. I've talked to plenty of scouts in the last few weeks that feel like, a lot of the public lists are very different from what they have in terms of top picks, and also a lot of the mock drafts they've seen. The thing that I'm continually told is that it's been really chalky in terms of like what's been the public throughout the entire season, and their boards look a lot different. So I think there's bound to be surprises in the first round as a result. And that could start all the way at number one. You really don't know at this point. We don't know who the Canadians have number one. And then really after that, it's really a crapshoot in terms of who's going to go 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, really, there's not a ton of way to predict that right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the Canadians will take Wright. But beyond that, I get that, and that's why I do rankings, right? Because the mock is going to be, if you do a mock this year, it's going to be the hardest mock you've ever done in your life. Because I do think things are all over the board, because I've spoken to people too. And so I realize when I'm doing my rankings, I'm really on my own island. And that's fine, because I don't expect to match every NHL board. I don't. But again, that's just the way this draft's going to be. I've kind of resigned myself for that. But I think, and you could tell me if you agree with this, I actually think that picking in the second spot for the future is the worst spot to pick, because that's the spot that's going to get the most second guessing in this draft, I think.
It could be. I think it's better. I personally think I think especially, and it's not just because of, it matters who's picking second. The fact that the Devils are picking second, they have top two centers. The fact that they have a top tier defense prospect in Luke Hughes, to me, suggests that they have more options with this number 2 pick than really anybody else. Because they could go Slafkovsky. That would be the chalk pick, right? That
Right.
they pick Juraj Slafkovsky. They've got a top tier winger to go down the line. Tom Fitzgerald hasn't shied away from this. They could trade that pick. There's an opportunity to trade down, trade it for a roster player. If there's somebody out there that say, okay, well, Shane Wright goes number 1, and they desperately want Juraj Slafkovsky or Logan Cooley or one of the 2 defensemen, then all of a sudden you've got some real ammunition to make a significant trade there. So that's another option. So I think that for me personally, you're right. If whoever ends up with that pick in the end, there will be a lot of second guessing. And I think, we've seen it with the Flyers where Nolan Patrick, the second guessing, that is a very different situation. I think that it's really important to remember, the Nolan Patrick injury history situation is such a huge part of that narrative.
It is.
We don't know what if he stayed healthy, we don't know what he could have become.
Right.
Right.
But then you see, okay, well then there's Miro Heiskanen, there's Cale Makar, there's Elias Pettersson, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, we really missed out. But really, we don't know. But yeah, I think in a lot of time, I think in some cases, Russ, you're absolutely correct. But I think particularly for the Devils, this is an opportunity for them that I think they can really propel their franchise, whether it's picking Slafkovsky, who I would pick if I were them, or whether it's grabbing one of the 2 defensemen. Luke Hughes is a left shot. You get some right shot guys. That's something that gives them a lot of options there. So I think they're in particularly sitting pretty.
Yeah, I think for me, the Devils are the biggest wild card going into this draft because it's going to be so difficult to predict what they'll do. Whether it's taking a pick, like you just said, that's kind of a slightly unexpected pick because you're right, they already have some prospect depths in other areas. But there are so many needs on that team, and I can absolutely see them trading down to get a goaltender, to get some other veteran support, and get.
And
Like
I'll muddy up the
first-round
mix
pick.
too. I mean, they could take Cooley and make Hischier a winger someday. I mean, he could play on the wing. Like they could do that too.
Or Cooley a winger. Yeah.
Or Cooley a winger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the interesting thing is that, when you have such a dynamic talent like that, I personally think that Cooley's biggest value is I think he is a center, even though he's not a big guy.
Me too.
He does too many things too well to not have him there. But it's like, that's the other thing. Now here's the other thing, Russ, just to throw, and I know this is your podcast and I'm taking it over for 1 second, but
Okay, do it.
This is what happens. I was having a conversation with a scout at the Clark Cup final the other day, and he said, what happens if Montreal doesn't take Shane Wright? Where does he go? Because it's probably not New Jersey.
No, then I think
Arizona.
New Jersey would make a trade then. That's when I think New Jersey makes a trade. That's when I think
that's the thing. I think there could be some movement on draft day.
Only if that happened, and I don't know if that'll happen, but if that were to happen, then I think you would see a team saying, all right, we either want Wright or Slafkovsky, and we're willing to pay for it. I think that's a crazy scenario, but it could happen.
And that's what's so interesting to me because
Yeah,
I
it could,
really think that Slafkovsky is this shiny object that people are not going to be able to stay away from.
You're probably right. I mean, that's the thing is that how often do you see, I think everybody would love to have Andrei Svechnikov, you look at that and you say, well, what a great number 2 pick that turned out to be. And you've got a guy that's a little bit bigger that, has played against professionals more in his draft season, has had success on the international stage, much like Svechnikov did in lesser tournaments. But still, it's like, if you can have a top tier winger, Taylor Hall worked out for being a top tier winger. Other guys haven't, but having that there, I think he's big, he's skilled, and he's obviously, scoring at a high clip at this World Championship, which is his last impression on the scouts. So
yeah, there'll be some recency bias.
He is a fascinating prospect.
He is a fascinating prospect. There is some recency bias. He doesn't play defense. He's going to have to learn how to do that, but he is a heck of an offensive talent, no doubt. All right, we'll have more with Chris coming up next, but first, I want to take a moment to talk about Athletic Greens. I started using Athletic Greens because I wanted better gut health, more energy, optimized immune system, and hated taking pills and vitamins. I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great. With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, all the things. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. Athletic Greens contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything while still tasting good. Athletic Greens supports better sleep quality and recovery. It also supports mental clarity and alertness. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you free a 1-year supply immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. It's nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from all our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And here is more with Chris Peters. So I think the other question for me with all of this and the unknown, the Flyers picking at 5 is so difficult to predict, I think, just because there is no way to know what's going to happen in the 2 to 4 slot here for sure. And there's going to be so many options, I think, on the table for the Flyers. And there's schools of thought where you just go best available, or should they be picking a defenseman? Like, is this a draft where they could low key get a really good defenseman that's going to be a backbone of their decor?
Yeah, that is a tough one to answer because I think really there are so many options available to them, as you mentioned, and I think that one of the 2 defensemen is going to be there. I don't necessarily I like Nemec a lot. I like Jiricek a lot. I think they both bring a lot to the table. I think it's an easier call if it's Jiricek because you get some size, you get some offensive ability there.
Right.
When you're looking at a Nemec, you're like, oh, we've already got, guys like Cam York. I mean, is there an opportunity here to grab an impact forward where it's a Cutter Gauthier or a Joachim Kamel, and at that point you're looking at wings. I think you'd love to have a center. You'd hope maybe Logan Cooley drops far enough and you get him. And then all of a sudden you've got a center, you got some depth down the middle. But to me at this point, it is, you take the best player available. I don't know who that's going to be relative to, we say best player available, but every team has a different best player available. It's not like the NFL where, they're going to pick, the best tight end available. That's not how it's usually going to work. So they're going to have their board structured in a way that they're like, well, how do we address our team needs while also not leaving too much value on the table? That's typically how teams do it. They might weight defensemen differently. They might weight a forward differently than they do. So, there's a lot of options available to them there.
Here's the funny thing. Based on the scenario you gave, and because I'm more of a Jiricek guy than Nemec, if he's there, if Nemec is there, Jiricek's gone, if Matthew Savoie is there, I'm walking up there and I'm taking Matthew Savoie because I think he has the most amount of talent. Now, will it all translate? I think most of it will. He's not going to be a center. He'll be a winger. But this guy, his brain,
Right.
his ability to do things on the ice, but his ability to get better every day is kind of off the charts. But because he's 5'9", he is going to take a little tumble here where if he were 6 foot, he wouldn't be taking a tumble at all.
Right. And that's the other thing. It's like one of the biggest questions I have is who is going to go higher? Is it going to be Connor Geekie or Matthew Savoie?
I think it should be Savoie, but Geekie's 6'4". So this will be the litmus test, won't it?
Yeah.
And that's
it will be. And I think, they're. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that's the huge question for me, because I think that I've seen, as some of various prospect experts put their rankings out and different lists out, Savoie has dropped a little bit in their estimation, I think, from the last time I was looking at lists. And I just don't understand that, based on the fact that he didn't drop his level of play overall. And that people are starting to have those size doubts creeping into them and maybe dropping him down a little bit in the rankings. And I don't understand that, because we have clear evidence that it's possible for smaller guys to be successful.
Right. And I'll tell you why he's dropped. It's not because of him. It's because of everybody else. That's the issue. I think really the thing is that there have been enough players. Like, I also would have Savoie ahead of Geekie, Russ, but it's like, I know how NHL teams work, and that's
me too.
There's a size thing, but I would say that, guys like Kamel, Gauthier, Frank Nazar, those are players that I think have shown in various settings NHL skill sets that are of a higher variety, because Savoie is very smart. He's very skilled. He's got, good enough speed. He's not an amazing skater for his size. Like, that is one thing where it's like where Frank Nazar is an incredible skater.
He is
at almost the same size. I think there's a belief that Nazar could play center, whereas Savoie, there is less of a belief that he would be a center. So players like that have kind of established themselves in such a way where, everybody had a lot of respect for Savoie. I mean, I've been watching him. I thought he should have gotten exceptional status. The WHL was proven right in not giving it to him because of he just was not physically ready for that level of play at 15 years old. And then, he has a great season this year. So he's a fascinating prospect. I personally don't see him as an organizational fit for the Flyers. It doesn't seem like the type of player they would normally draft. It doesn't seem like the type of player like Brent Flahr, teams have picked. But at the same time, when you're looking at the rest of the board and you say, are both defensemen gone? Is there anything else we can do? And do we believe he can be a center? If you can believe he can be a center, then I think that makes sense. But I would be shocked if the Flyers were one of the teams that viewed him as a long-term center.
Well, I'm going to add one more thing into the mix here, because since I did speak to Cutter Gauthier, and knowing that he has played some center and he has been on a regular basis, every once in a while they throw him in there at center when they need to. If you could tell me, Chris Peters, that Cutter Gauthier is going to play center like Pierre-Luc Dubois did, then I think if I'm the Flyers, then he's instantly in that conversation. If he's a winger, then I'm not sure he's in the conversation at that early.
Yeah, if you want to know why he raised up the charts so much this season, it's because of the belief that he could be a center.
Right.
I know that NHL teams feel like he can be, and after what the difference is, okay, well, he played with Logan Cooley and Frank Nazar, and those guys are elite centers. And you want to have Cutter Gauthier in your top six. You have him there. The thing is that Gauthier, you give him that runway, you give him that opportunity. I would be stunned if he doesn't play center at least if BC tries to play him at center in college, because they tried to do that with Matt Boldy. It didn't work.
Yeah.
But I think that is he has a few tools. Even though Boldy was a better defender, he was better defensively from the wing position. He just knew how to be a defender at the wing. Gauthier is so sure-handed with the puck. I have a lot of faith in him in terms of his competitiveness, his drive, and his speed and everything else. Like, he does more than enough for me to say, hey, maybe he could be a center, and at his size and at his strength, with that scoring ability, then you've got a player that is really intriguing. And that's actually in one of the mock drafts I did. I mocked Cutter Gauthier to the Flyers. He feels like a Flyer to me in a lot of ways. He, if he can be a center, then all of a sudden you say, oh wow, that is the guy that, and even if he doesn't, he's going to be a high end wing.
He'll be a high end wing for
his
sure with
ceiling
that
is
shot.
top six winger with
30
goal scorer. Like, I mean, he's got so much potential.
Yeah, and I guess that's my biggest question, because it's hard, as somebody just looking at the prospects overall and who I would want on the Flyers is very different than what the Flyers tend to do in these drafts. So is there anybody else that you can say, oh, this is a Flyers kind of pick?
I think it changes with the different. I look more in towards the history of Chuck Fletcher and the teams that he has had. When he was with the Wild, they so rarely had top picks. So it's hard to judge exactly what they would do with this particular one. So I think in this draft class, there aren't, for whatever reason, I just feel like Gauthier makes so much sense to me in that range, just based on the way that he has trended. But I mean, I think you look at it and you say, well, everybody needs a top six winger. Everybody needs, a top four defenseman. And, I think Jiricek, if we're looking at the two defensemen, Jiricek, looks more like a Flyer to me than Nemec does.
Right.
I think he's got that edge. He also has that bomb of a shot. There's so many things about his game.
He's like a destroyer
teams
sometimes.
are just going to be fascinated by, including the physical. He is. He can be. Yeah. So I would say that, that's probably another guy. And then beyond that, the rest of the guys would be lower in the draft ranking, guys that you wouldn't want to pick that high. I don't think, like guys like Jimmy Snuggerud at USA, and guys that have a little bit more edge but also have that offensive capability. So it's tough to say, but I would say, based on their, the history of the administration and certainly of the Flyers historically, the one that just feels like a team fit to me is Gauthier.
Well, here's one that I'll throw in the mix, Chris, because I think there's a chance he could be a center. But even if he can't, it's high octane offense. I love Lekaramaki. I do. And if I have to consider him there, I would. And I know the under 18s isn't the only body of work I looked at. That was a hell of a body of work, though. But he does have some great ability.
Yeah, I think he's he's probably, I haven't finished my rankings yet, but I mean, he's a top 10 for me all day.
Yeah.
I think that his goal scoring ability, the fact that he did it at the professional level, the fact that he took over games at the under 18s, and this is a guy that was coming off of illness. He missed the last month of the season.
He had mono, right?
He's got good enough speed. He had mono. Yeah. So he got, enough speed. He's one of the best shots in the draft. You look at Kamel, him, Gauthier, Nazar, Cooley, those guys can all shoot it. Shane Wright can shoot it too. They all have great releases. Lekaramaki has some of the best. And the thing that I love about him is he just understands how to play offensively. It's not just about scoring. At the U18s, he took what was given to him, but then he also was making plays and creating for his teammates. And that was really eye-opening to me, because I had always looked at him as more of a shooter. And just to see him do that was big for me. So that's a guy that I could definitely see being a pick there. I think he fits the profile. He has dynamic abilities, and so he's a guy that certainly could go higher than he's been ranked in a lot of places.
All right, we'll have our final section of our conversation with Chris Peters coming up next. But first, BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports development, including this year's basketball playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to the playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. One of the other things on my mind, and you talked about it a little bit with the Devils and potentially trading down, is that this draft has a lot of really quality players. Flyers do not have a second round pick. And I think that could be something they're missing out on. And at 5, with so many quality players potentially available, is trading down something that you would do to get a second round pick?
That's a really good question, because I think it would have to. I wouldn't want to move down too far. But if I could recoup, say you get a second round or a first rounder that's decently high, and 2 second rounders or something like that, it's hard to get that kind of package. But I think in this particular draft, if there's a team there that really desperately wants something, then yes, I could see that being a scenario. I just think at this point, the player that you're going to get in that range without trading it away is going to probably become your best prospect. And that's hard to pass up. If you could get 2 prospects, you love that, but I don't love the second round. That, like, I really, after 20, there's not a lot of players that get me really excited here. Honestly, there's not a lot of players after 15 that get me super excited about this particular draft. It depends on who you are. Like, yeah, Russ, I mean, it's personal preference. Like,
It is.
I don't love this draft class. It's just, I haven't, and I haven't really, I've watched these guys, and they're just, it's not that there aren't good players. There are absolutely good players, but it's like guys that get me excited about, the class and about the possibilities. I feel like there were more last year. I feel like there were more the year before. I feel like, really just in terms of the pure breadth of prospects and the type of players that I like, I don't see as many. I mean, it's just such a weird year. We don't have many players from Ontario that are getting us, out of our chairs. We don't have many players from the Quebec League that are getting us out of our chairs. So you take 2 massive feeder leagues for the NHL and don't have the type of players that you get really excited about. And it limits your draft class. Like, I'm excited about the Americans. The NTDP guys are obviously very strong this year. It's a great European class. It's just not as strong of a Canadian class as we're used to seeing. And I think that has a major impact on how we feel about this draft. And that, hopefully next year, I'm already looking forward to next year. I'm looking forward to getting this draft through, because I think there's a lot of potential in the next class. But yeah, but I think, where you're at, just to get back to the original question, I just think that the value that you're going to get out of the player in that position is probably going to be greater than anything that you're going to be able to get later on. But it does, if you get the right package, I think it's absolutely worth exploring.
So here's the thing, Chris. If I could get, let's say I'm doing this with Arizona. So let's say I'm in the top 15, or even if it's another team that has a second that's like, 5, 6, 7 picks in. As long as I'm top 15 and I could get 7 picks in on the second round, so I can get a guy like Adam Ingram, somebody like that, I'm probably doing the trade.
Yeah, and I think that's, yeah. If you can get somebody, I think there are going to be some guys that absolutely drop that are probably going to be super high on their own list. That happens every year. You feel like you got a first rounder in the second round. I mean, I feel like, I'm sure they felt that way about Bobby Brink, in terms of what they were able to get when they did trade down in that scenario. I still think that was a great haul for them to get what they got, and the different things that they've been able to do over the years by trading down. I just think that when you have a top 5, top 6, top 7, anywhere in that range, it becomes a lot more difficult, and you really have a lot of leverage. But I think, you look at Arizona and their war chest of picks, or Seattle with their war chest of picks, and it's like, maybe there's a deal to be made there. You just have to wait and see. But I mean,
and I'll give you one more scenario.
Do it. It'd have to be a first. Yeah, sure, go for it.
So let's say there were those 2 seconds that you said, and I feel like top 15 is pretty strong. So I'm not that worried about who I'm getting there. I've already revealed I like Adam Ingram a lot as a guy in the second. I might take a home run swing with Zach Bookman. Now that I have a second, I'm probably going to do that.
Yeah, if you have multiple second round picks and there are guys that you are, you want to take swings on, I mean, that's when you do it, right?
Yep.
And that's probably why if I were Arizona, I'd just keep them all. I just use them all. I'd use all the picks. Just use them all. Unless you can get a roster player or something like that. So that's the thing. I mean, and I love the ability that multiple picks gives you to take a swing on players that you're passionate about, or that you see a lot of upside in, but there are major flaws. I think, it's going to be interesting to see where guys like Brad Lambert go, because he's got immense tools, but a ton of flaws. Just a laundry list of them. And so.
Do you want my prediction on Lambert?
Like, how can this? He looks like he should be. Yes, I would. I'd love to hear that.
I think Lambert is going to end up on the Islanders. I do, with his uncle. I do think that's going to happen.
Don't put these things into
When did
the
they
world, pick? Russ.
I got to see when they pick. Hold on, I got to look it up.
Yeah, I do think overall, though, there's going to be a lot of surprises in this draft, whether it's trades, whether it's unsuspected picks, and I think it's going to create a lot of movement as a result. So it should be a pretty exciting draft overall, no matter what.
They're picking 13. I think he could be
I think
there.
So. Oh, he'll be there. I think he'll be there for sure. Yeah. That'd be – if I'm Lou, I said, nah, no thanks. They already got a lot to, and it worked out.
It did work out, and that's why I think they might be willing to do it again.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I personally can't wait, because I think that I completely agree that this is going to be a wild draft. I think we'll see a little bit more movement. It just depends on which teams are passionate about which players. But I'm pumped for it. I think it being in person again changes the dynamic again a little bit too. So I'm hoping for fireworks and chaos. That's when drafts are the best.
That is a great scenario for all of us, I think, on draft day. Chris, this has been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for all of your insight and coming to talk to us about the draft.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for indulging my car. This is my version of the car cast here. So unfortunately,
I mean, if you could sing, go ahead and sing right now.
My skills are not as good. So no. Thank you for bearing with me, and also I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to talk to you guys. I think it's a really exciting draft for the Flyers in particular, and man, cannot wait to see what happens. So thanks for having me, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, where can people find you out there?
You'll get my draft rankings at dailyfaceoff.com. I also have my Substack, hockeysense.substack.com, which will have a lot more draft stuff as well. And then at Chris M. Peters on Twitter is I'll be following along the draft live, and probably tweeting out a lot of thoughts as things happen.
Excellent. Thanks again, Chris. All right. Once again, thanks to Chris Peters. What an amazing conversation. That was
always
so much fun.
Always thought-provoking.
Yeah, I'm very curious how this draft is going to play out, because like we just talked about, pretty much anything could happen.
There's a lot of scenarios, man. There are.
Yeah. All right, wrapping up with our gritty thing of the week. They're continuing to reuse some content and repackaging it a little bit, but there's some...
It's like Gritty's greatest hits. It really
is. It is true, but there is some good stuff as well. I think, of course, Gritty likes to get naked, and so there was a post on Twitter of naked Gritty with an oops caption, as if he had sent a nude to the wrong person.
Yeah, whatever. Move on.
And then there was some more of the reused content with the other mascots, where they were jumping off a trampoline and trying to hit specific boxes on the landing mat, which is pretty impressive.
It's impressive. That's tricky
inside a costume like that.
Yeah. It's tricky without the costume. Let's be real.
Yeah. And then there are a couple of TikToks. One is certified forklift operator, which again is part of what Gritty was doing with some of the other mascots. And,
no way Gritty has a license for that.
No way. OSHA
should be looking out for that.
And my favorite one, though, was the why can we eat salad but not grass?
But we do
This
eat
is
grass. People eat wheatgrass.
no, but this is especially cute because it's in response to a commencement speech that Taylor Swift gave at
Oh
NYU.
God.
So it's a bit. It's very cute, and there's been a lot of
Did they
content
give Taylor
related to
Swift
the.
an honorary degree? Because she didn't go to
They
NYU.
did. They
Yeah.
did. But there's been a lot of good content related to that
Mhm.
speech, and of course, Gritty had to get in on it.
Of course.
All right, that'll do it for today's show. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back again on Monday. We'll have more draft coverage coming up next week, the latest on the coaching search, any free agent news. Plus, on Monday, we'll have our nemesis of the week, which is always a good time. As a reminder, we want to hear from you, so send in your mailbag questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers, or you can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
You made us your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. From first round matchups to each Stanley Cup final victory, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. You can hear me on today's show. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everyone.